The morning after that tense night felt different. The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that used to suffocate Christy. This quiet felt purposeful, like the silence before a new chapter begins. She woke up early, long before the sun fully rose over the compound walls, and for a few moments she simply sat on the edge of her bed thinking about the long road that had brought her here. Years ago she had been a confident professional walking into a German company office with her head high. Then slowly, piece by piece, that life had been taken away from her. But now something inside her had awakened again, stronger than before. She realized that while Orlando had tried to shrink her world, life had quietly prepared a path back for her. Christy stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the compound. The swimming pool water had finally been cleared, and the damaged car had been removed days earlier by an insurance assessment team. The pool now looked calm again, but for Christy it had become a reminder of something important. That moment when the car was dropped into the water had been the final proof she needed. It was the day she stopped hoping Orlando would change. Instead, she began planning how she would protect herself and her children no matter what happened next. Inside the house, the children were getting ready for school. Annie sat at the dining table carefully tying her shoelaces while S struggled with his backpack zipper. Christy helped him gently, smiling as she did. For years her children had been the one light in her darkest moments, and now she was determined that their future would not be controlled by someone else's insecurity. Across the room Orlando sat silently drinking tea. He watched Christy moving around the kitchen with a calm confidence that irritated him deeply. Something about her had changed in a way he could not control anymore. The old Christy would have avoided eye contact, trying to keep peace in the house. But this new version of her moved with quiet certainty, speaking only when necessary, never raising her voice yet never backing down either. After the children left for school, Christy returned to the living room where Orlando still sat. She placed a small folder on the table in front of him. "What is this?" he asked cautiously. "Information," she replied calmly. "About some changes I'm making." Orlando opened the folder slowly. Inside were documents about a new business registration, a small logistics and supply company that Christy had begun establishing quietly using part of her remaining savings. He looked up sharply. "You're starting a business now?" "Yes," she said simply. "You didn't discuss it with me." Christy folded her hands calmly. "I am informing you now." The words were polite but firm, and Orlando felt the familiar sting to his pride. "This house cannot have two heads," he said, trying to regain authority. "You should have told me first." Christy met his eyes without anger. "This house does not need two heads, Orlando. It needs responsible adults who contribute positively. I am doing exactly that." Her voice was steady, not loud, not emotional. That calmness unsettled him more than shouting ever could. Over the next few weeks Christy moved quietly but efficiently. She met with suppliers, spoke with former colleagues from her professional days, and slowly began building connections again. The experience she had gained before marriage was still there, waiting to be used. At first Orlando tried to ignore it. He told himself the business would fail, that she would come running back needing help. But instead the opposite happened. Within a few months Christy's small company secured a modest supply contract with a local construction firm. It wasn't massive money yet, but it was stable and growing. The first time Christy received payment from the contract, she sat quietly in her office space at home and looked at the notification on her phone. For a moment she closed her eyes and whispered a small prayer of gratitude. It wasn't just money. It was proof that she had rebuilt something with her own effort. Meanwhile, far away in the United States, Okenido continued to thrive. His career in the technology sector was advancing quickly, and every few weeks he called his sister to check on her. One evening during a video call, he noticed something different in her face. "Sister," he said with a smile, "you look stronger these days." Christy laughed softly. "Life teaches people many lessons." Okenido nodded thoughtfully. "Just remember one thing. You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens, we move forward together." Those words meant more to Christy than he realized. Back in Warri, however, Orlando's frustration was building. The more Christy succeeded quietly, the more his sense of control slipped away. The house no longer felt like a place where his word was absolute. Instead, he was living beside a woman who had rediscovered her independence. One evening he returned from work to see a small delivery truck parked outside the gate unloading office furniture. Desks, shelves, and computers were being carried into a room that Christy had converted into her business office. He stood there watching silently as workers moved in and out. Finally he asked, "What is all this?" Christy walked out of the house and answered calmly, "My office equipment. Inside my house." She tilted her head slightly. "Our house, Orlando. And the room I'm using is one that has been empty for years." He had no immediate reply. Neighbors began to notice the changes too. Some had witnessed the earlier drama with the car and the pool, and quietly they admired Christy's resilience. Instead of arguing publicly, she had simply rebuilt her life step by step. Months passed. Christy's business continued growing slowly but steadily. Her mother's kiosk in the village also began doing well, providing steady income and giving the older woman pride in her independence. And the children were thriving in their new environment, surrounded by stability and opportunity. But Orlando's internal struggle was far from over. Late one night he sat alone in the living room, staring at the quiet house. The sound of Christy typing softly in her home office drifted down the hallway. For the first time in many years he realized something that unsettled him deeply. Christy had not destroyed his life. She had simply continued living hers. And that realization forced him to confront something he had avoided for a very long time, the possibility that his own actions had created the distance now growing between them. Yet whether he would truly change, or attempt one final desperate move, was something no one could predict. Because sometimes the most important turning points in life come when people must choose between pride and growth. And Orlando was standing right at that crossroads. But which direction would he choose? The night after Orlando sat alone in the living room became the beginning of something no one in that house expected. The house was silent except for the ticking wall clock and the faint sound of Christy typing in the small office room she had turned into her workspace. The soft glow from her laptop spilled across the hallway floor, a quiet signal that she was still awake, still building something with her life while the rest of the house slept. Orlando leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. For years he had believed that controlling Christy was the same thing as leading his family. He believed that if she had less power, less money, and fewer opportunities, then she would automatically respect him more. But now the opposite had happened. The more he tried to shrink her world, the more life had found ways to lift her again. And it was driving him completely mad. The next morning, Christy woke up early as usual. She prepared breakfast for the children, helped them get ready for school, and packed their lunchboxes with the same quiet care she had always shown them. But there was something new in her eyes now. Confidence. The kind that returns when someone finally realizes their strength was never truly gone. As the children left for school, Christy returned to the kitchen and found Orlando already sitting at the table. He watched her carefully. There was a long silence between them before he finally spoke. "So this business of yours," he said slowly, stirring his tea. "How serious is it?" Christy placed a plate of toast on the table and sat down across from him. "It's serious enough," she replied calmly. Orlando gave a small dry laugh. "You think running a small supply company will suddenly make you independent?" Christy didn't react emotionally. Instead, she simply took a sip of her tea and said something that made the entire room feel heavier. "I don't need sudden independence, Orlando. I'm rebuilding stability." For a moment Orlando had no response. Because deep down he understood something uncomfortable. She wasn't asking him for permission anymore. And that was new. Over the next few weeks Christy's routine became disciplined and focused. She spent mornings managing her growing supply orders, afternoons handling logistics calls, and evenings helping the children with homework. Her business wasn't huge yet, but it was moving steadily. Very steadily. And people were beginning to notice. One afternoon a delivery truck arrived at the house carrying office equipment. 2 workers carefully unloaded desks, chairs, and computers while Christy supervised the arrangement in her office space. Orlando stood at the front door watching everything. He said nothing. But the tightness in his jaw revealed everything he was feeling. Later that evening he walked into her office and leaned against the door frame. "You're really serious about this?" he said. Christy didn't look up from her laptop. "Yes." "And what happens when it fails?" This time she looked at him. Her voice was calm but firm. "Then I will learn from it and try again." Orlando frowned. "You speak like someone who has already planned a long future." Christy held his gaze. "I have." The quiet confidence in her voice made Orlando uncomfortable. Because for the first time since their marriage began, he realized something. Christy was no longer living her life around his approval. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in the United States, Okinido's life was moving forward quickly. His work in the technology company had impressed his supervisor so much that they had recently promoted him to lead a major project team. The salary increase was massive. But the first person he called was not his boss. It was his sister. "Sister," he said excitedly over the phone. "You remember how you supported me when no one believed in me?" Christy laughed softly. "How could I forget?" "Well," he continued, "it's time for me to return that support properly." Christy frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "You'll see soon." 3 weeks later a large envelope arrived at the house. Inside were documents. Property documents. Okinido had purchased a second house. This one was in Christy's name. Not rented. Owned. When Christy saw the papers her hands started shaking. She called her brother immediately. "Okin, what have you done?" His voice on the phone was calm and warm. "I made sure my sister will never again feel trapped in a place she doesn't deserve to be." Christy's eyes filled with tears. But this time they were tears of relief. Not pain. When Orlando discovered the documents later that evening, his reaction was immediate. "What is this?" he demanded, holding the papers. Christy answered calmly. "My brother bought a property." "For you?" "Yes." Orlando stared at her. The realization slowly spread across his face like a storm cloud. "You mean, you now have another house?" Christy nodded slightly. Silence filled the room. Because for the first time in years, Orlando understood something clearly. Christy now had options. And when someone who was once trapped suddenly has options, everything changes. He looked at her again, trying to read her expression. "Are you planning to leave this house?" Christy held his gaze. "I'm planning to live peacefully." And for Orlando, that answer was more frightening than anything else she could have said. Because peace often means something powerful. It means someone has finally stopped fighting for approval and started choosing their own path instead. But the biggest question now was no longer about Christy's strength. It was about Orlando. Would he finally confront the consequences of his actions? Or would his pride push him into making one last terrible mistake? Because sometimes when people feel their control slipping away, they don't react with wisdom. They react with desperation. And desperation can change everything. The morning sunlight crept slowly through the tall glass windows of the small apartment, casting long golden streaks across the quiet room. But for Maya, it was anything but peaceful. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection like she was looking at a stranger. Her hands trembled slightly. On the sink beside her, a small white test stick rested silently. 2 lines. Clear. Unmistakable. Positive. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "No, this can't be happening," she whispered. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest as if it were trying to escape. Just 3 weeks ago, her life had been simple. Predictable. Safe. Now everything had changed. And the worst part. There was only one man who could be responsible. Marcus. The billionaire who had walked into her life like a storm, powerful, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. She remembered that night clearly. The charity gala. The flashing cameras. The music. The moment Marcus had pulled her aside after a heated argument. Not anger. Not hatred. But something deeper. Something neither of them had expected. Maya closed her eyes, forcing the memory away. No, she whispered to herself. I can't tell him. Marcus was a man who controlled everything around him, his companies, his reputation, his world. A surprise like this. It could destroy everything. Or worse. It could make him think she was trying to trap him. And Maya refused to become that kind of woman. She grabbed the test and threw it into the trash, covering it with tissues as if hiding the truth would somehow erase it. But deep down, she knew the truth had already begun to change her life forever. Across the city. Meanwhile, in the top floor office of Marcus Vale Industries, Marcus stood beside the massive window overlooking the entire city skyline. His expression was cold. Controlled. But inside, his thoughts were far from calm. He hadn't stopped thinking about Maya since that night. And that irritated him more than anything. Marcus was used to people wanting something from him, money, power, influence. But Maya. She had walked away. No calls. No messages. No attempt to reach him. That was the part he couldn't understand. His assistant, Daniel, entered the office cautiously. Sir, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Marcus didn't move. Cancel it. Daniel blinked. Sir. I said cancel it. That meeting had taken weeks to arrange. Millions of dollars were involved. But Marcus suddenly found that none of it mattered. Because something felt wrong. Like a missing piece in a puzzle he couldn't solve. Find Maya Carter, Marcus said quietly. Daniel hesitated. The woman from the gala. Marcus turned slightly, his sharp gaze making the air in the room feel heavy. Yes. Daniel nodded quickly. I'll have our private investigator start immediately. As the door closed behind him, Marcus stared out at the city again. For the first time in years. He felt like something important was slipping beyond his control. And Marcus Vale hated losing control. Later that night, Maya sat on the small couch in her apartment, staring at the unopened letter in her hands. Medical results. She didn't want to read them. Because reading them would make everything real. Her phone suddenly buzzed on the table. Unknown number. She hesitated. Then answered. Hello. The voice on the other end was calm. Professional. Miss Carter, this is Daniel from Marcus Vale's office. Maya froze. Her heart skipped a beat. I think you have the wrong number. Before she could hang up, Daniel spoke again. Mr. Vale would like to meet you. Silence filled the room. Maya's fingers tightened around the phone. Why? Daniel paused. That, he didn't say. Of course he didn't. Marcus Vale never explained himself. Tell him I'm busy, Maya said quickly. She hung up before Daniel could respond. Her breathing was uneven now. This was bad. Very bad. Because if Marcus saw her now, if he noticed the small changes already beginning, if he discovered the truth, everything would explode. Across the city, Marcus stared down at his phone after Daniel reported the call. She refused. Marcus asked. Daniel nodded nervously. Marcus leaned back in his chair slowly. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Not with humor, but with challenge. No one refuses me twice, he said quietly. The next morning, Maya stepped out of the small bakery where she worked, holding a bag of fresh bread. The cool morning air brushed against her face. For a moment, she felt almost normal again. Until a black luxury car pulled up beside the sidewalk. Her stomach dropped instantly. The window rolled down. And there he was. Marcus. Wearing a perfectly tailored dark suit, his sharp eyes locked onto her like he had already predicted this moment. Maya, he said calmly. Her pulse raced. What are you doing here? Marcus stepped out of the car. People passing on the street slowed down, whispering when they recognized him. But Marcus ignored everyone. His attention stayed on Maya. "You've been avoiding me." Maya forced a small laugh. "I think you're overestimating your importance." Marcus took one slow step closer. "Am I?" Her breath caught slightly. Even now, standing this close to him made her heart beat faster. And that terrified her. Because the last thing she needed right now was Marcus getting too close. He studied her face carefully. Something in his expression shifted. A flicker of suspicion. "You look different," he said. Maya immediately stepped back. "It's called being tired. People who work real jobs experience it." Marcus didn't respond right away. But his eyes remained sharp. Observant. Like he was searching for something hidden beneath the surface. Something Maya prayed he would never find. Finally he spoke again. "Have dinner with me tonight." Maya shook her head instantly. "No." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't a request." "Well, this is a refusal." She turned to walk away. But Marcus' voice stopped her. "You're hiding something." Her entire body froze. Slowly, she turned back. Marcus' expression was unreadable. But his instincts were already telling him something was wrong. Very wrong. And Marcus Vale had never ignored his instincts. As Maya walked away quickly, she placed a trembling hand over her stomach. A secret growing inside her. A truth that could change everything. Behind her, Marcus watched silently. His mind racing with questions. Because one thing was certain. Maya Carter was hiding something. And Marcus Vale had just decided. He was going to find out what it was. No matter what it took. The rain began falling just after midnight. Soft at first. Then heavier, until the entire city seemed wrapped in a cold, restless storm. Inside her apartment, Maya sat quietly at the edge of her bed, staring down at the envelope in her hands. She had finally opened it. Medical confirmation. There was no denying it anymore. Her life had changed. Her fingers slowly traced the words written across the paper as her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "How did everything become so complicated so fast?" she whispered. 3 weeks ago she had been invisible to the world. Just another young woman trying to build a simple life. Now she was carrying a secret that could shake the life of one of the most powerful men in the city. Marcus Vale. Maya closed her eyes. She knew exactly what would happen if he discovered the truth. His world was full of powerful business rivals, judgmental elites, and people who loved scandals. If the news spread, it wouldn't just affect him. It would destroy her. And Maya had no intention of becoming the center of someone else's headline. Across the city, in a towering glass building lit by the storm outside, Marcus Vale stood alone in his office. Lightning flashed across the skyline behind him. His desk was covered with files. Photographs. Reports. All about one person. Maya Carter. Marcus leaned back slowly in his chair, studying the information Daniel had gathered. Age 24, works at a small bakery, no criminal record, no wealthy connections. Marcus frowned slightly. That didn't make sense. People usually try to get closer to him for money, opportunity, or influence. But Maya had done the exact opposite. She kept her distance. She avoided his calls. She refused his invitation to dinner. And that made her the most interesting mystery Marcus had encountered in years. Daniel stood near the doorway, waiting quietly. "There's something else, sir," he finally said. Marcus looked up. "What?" Daniel hesitated. "Our investigator said Miss Carter recently visited a medical clinic twice." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "A clinic?" "Yes." Marcus leaned forward slowly, his sharp instincts immediately coming alive. "Why?" Daniel shook his head. "They couldn't access the medical records. Private information." Marcus was silent for a moment. Then he stood up. A slow, calculating smile appeared on his face. Then we'll ask the doctor directly. The clinic. The next morning, the small private clinic was unusually quiet. Dr. Elena Brooks adjusted her glasses as she reviewed patient notes at her desk. It had been a long morning already. But nothing prepared her for the moment the clinic door opened. Marcus Vail walked in. Even people who had never met him before recognized him instantly. Confidence. Authority. Power. The entire room seemed to shift when he entered. The receptionist nearly dropped her pen. Mr. Vail. Marcus gave a polite but firm nod. I'm here to speak with Dr. Brooks. Minutes later, he sat across from the doctor in her office. Dr. Brooks tried to remain calm, though she could feel the tension in the room. Mr. Vail, she said carefully. How can I help you today? Marcus didn't waste time. I believe one of your patients recently visited this clinic. Dr. Brooks folded her hands together. I'm afraid patient confidentiality prevents me from discussing. Maya Carter, Marcus interrupted calmly. The doctor's expression shifted slightly. Marcus noticed it instantly. And that small reaction confirmed something important. He leaned forward. Doctor. I'm not asking for personal details. I just want to know if she's okay. Dr. Brooks remained silent. Marcus's voice softened just a little. She's important to me. That part wasn't entirely a lie. The doctor studied him carefully. Then she sighed quietly. I can't reveal everything, she said. Marcus waited. But I will say this, she continued slowly. Miss Carter is going through a life-changing situation. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. What kind of situation? The doctor hesitated again. Then she made a decision she wasn't sure she would regret later. She's pregnant. The room went completely silent. Marcus didn't move. Didn't speak. But his entire expression changed. Pregnant, he repeated quietly. Dr. Brooks nodded. Marcus leaned back slowly, his mind racing through memories, timelines, possibilities. There was only one conclusion that made sense. And it hit him like thunder. Is it mine? He asked quietly. Dr. Brooks immediately shook her head. That's not something I can confirm. Marcus stood up slowly. But the look in his eyes had completely changed. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was realization. Meanwhile, Maya was finishing her shift at the bakery when her coworker ran toward her. Maya. She looked up. What happened? You should see this. Her coworker handed her a phone. A photo filled the screen. A photo taken outside the clinic that morning. Marcus Vail entering the building. Maya's entire body went cold. No, she whispered. Her heart started racing. He knew. Or at least he was about to know. And Marcus Vail was not the kind of man who ignored the truth once he started searching for it. Maya grabbed her bag immediately. I have to go. She rushed out the door, her mind spinning with fear and urgency. Because if Marcus discovered the full truth, her quiet life would disappear forever. Across the city, Marcus stepped into his car. His driver looked back. Where to, sir? Marcus stared at the window, deep in thought. Then he gave only one instruction. Take me to Maya Carter. Meanwhile, Maya hurried through the crowded streets, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. But something told her it was already too late. Because Marcus Vail had finally discovered the one secret she had been trying to hide. And he was coming. The black luxury car stopped quietly outside the small bakery. Inside the car, Marcus Vail sat motionless. His eyes were fixed on the glass door of the shop. The name, Sweet Haven Bakery, was written across it in simple golden letters. A place far too small and ordinary for someone like him. And yet, this small bakery now held the answer to a question that could change his entire life. Marcus's driver glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Sir, we're here. Marcus didn't respond immediately. Instead, He watched as customers walked in and out of the bakery. People laughing. People chatting. Completely unaware that the man sitting in that car was one of the most powerful businessmen in the city. And that he might be about to discover something that would shake his carefully controlled world. Finally, Marcus opened the door and stepped out. Inside the bakery, Maya was trying to keep her hands steady as she boxed a cake for a customer. But her mind was racing. Ever since she saw the photo of Marcus entering the clinic earlier that morning, she had felt a growing knot of anxiety in her chest. She knew Marcus very well enough to understand one thing. Once he started looking for answers, he never stopped. The doorbell chimed. Maya looked up. And her entire body froze. Marcus Vale had just walked in. The small bakery suddenly felt too small. Too quiet. Even the other customers seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. Marcus's tall frame filled the doorway, his sharp eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Finally, Marcus walked forward slowly. Maya. Her name sounded heavier when he said it. More serious. More dangerous. The other bakery staff quickly found excuses to move toward the back of the shop, leaving them standing face to face. Maya swallowed. What are you doing here? Marcus studied her carefully. Not angry. Not aggressive. But focused in a way that made her heart beat even faster. I went to the clinic today, he said calmly. Her breath caught instantly. The room seemed to shrink around her. Marcus continued speaking, his voice controlled but intense. The doctor told me something interesting. Maya's fingers tightened around the box she was holding. She tried to keep her voice steady. You shouldn't be asking doctors about their patients. Marcus leaned slightly closer. You're pregnant. The words landed like thunder. A few customers nearby turned their heads in curiosity. Maya felt the ground beneath her feet shift. Her secret. The one thing she had tried so hard to keep hidden. Now standing in the open between them. Marcus's eyes searched her face. Why didn't you tell me? Maya's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear her own thoughts. She forced herself to answer. Because it's none of your business. Marcus's expression hardened slightly. If there's even a chance that child is mine, it is absolutely my business. The bakery became completely silent. Even the customers had stopped pretending not to listen. Maya felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. But she lifted her chin anyway. You're assuming too much. Marcus's voice dropped lower. Then correct me. The tension between them felt electric. For a moment, Maya considered lying. She considered denying everything. But something inside her refused to let him control the situation the way he controlled everything else in his life. So she spoke the truth. Yes, she said quietly. Marcus's entire posture changed. But that doesn't mean you get to walk into my life and start making decisions. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, his usually calm demeanor cracking just slightly. You're carrying my child and you didn't think I deserved to know. Maya's voice sharpened. Deserved. She stepped closer. You're a billionaire who treats relationships like business deals. Forgive me if I didn't want my child growing up inside one of your contracts. Marcus opened his mouth to respond. But before he could speak, the bakery door burst open. Everyone turned. A tall, elegant woman stepped inside. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. Her expression was cold, controlled, and furious. Marcus's face immediately changed. Victoria. The woman stopped a few feet away. Her eyes moved from Marcus to Maya and finally down to Maya's stomach. The entire room felt colder. Victoria's lips curled into a thin smile. So the rumors were true? Maya frowned. What rumors? Victoria stepped forward. You don't know who I am, do you? Maya shook her head slowly. Victoria extended her hand slightly, as if introducing herself at a former event. My name is Victoria Hale. She paused. Then added the words that made Marcus's expression go completely still. Marcus's fiancé. The bakery exploded with whispers. Maya felt the air leave her lungs. Her eyes moved slowly toward Marcus. But the look on his face told her everything she needed to know. He hadn't told her. Not a single word. Victoria crossed her arms, watching Maya carefully. So imagine my surprise when I discovered that the father of my future children might already be having one with someone else. The tension in the room was unbearable. Marcus stepped forward. Victoria, this isn't what you think. Victoria laughed softly. Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like. Her cold gaze returned to Maya. You've made a very dangerous mistake. Maya felt her protective instinct ignite instantly. What kind of mistake? Victoria's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. The kind that powerful families don't forgive. Marcus immediately stepped between them. That's enough. But Victoria wasn't finished. She leaned closer to Maya and said something that sent a ripple of fear through the room. If you think having his child will protect you, you clearly don't know the Hale family. And then she turned and walked out of the bakery. The door slammed behind her. Silence filled the room. Maya looked at Marcus slowly. Her voice was quiet, but sharp. You're engaged. Marcus looked genuinely conflicted for the first time since she had known him. It's complicated. Maya shook her head. No. Her voice was firm now. It's simple. She picked up her bag. You should leave. Marcus stepped forward. Maya. But she cut him off. I said leave. Marcus hesitated. But the look in her eyes told him something important. This situation had just become far bigger than either of them expected. And as he finally walked out of the bakery, neither of them realized one terrifying truth. Victoria Hale was not the kind of woman who accepted humiliation quietly.